Coming up on KCCI 8 News Close Up, more fallout after the shocking arrest of Des Moines' former superintendent.
We're heartbroken, we're sad, we're surprised.
New federal gun charges this week, school leadership in flux, and 1 week later, dozens of questions still unanswered.
Unfortunately, we just can't answer that, ma'am. I'm sorry.
And now the Des Moines School District is taking action, suing the company it hired to find a new superintendent.
This is about accountability.
This morning, how the district moves forward, what it means for students and staff, and what the case reveals about gaps in the system.
This is Iowa's news leader. This is KCCI 8 News Close Up.
Well, just over a week ago, federal immigration authorities arrested former Des Moines Superintendent Dr. Ian Roberts. Since then, there's been a series of shocking developments, and there's still a lot of questions about how all of this unfolded. We're working to get those answers as our community tries to move forward together. In the last week, the Des Moines School Board voted to accept Roberts' resignation as superintendent. Roberts is also now facing a federal gun charge, along with the immigration case his attorneys say they're working to reopen. Now the school district is suing JG Consulting, the search firm the board used to find and hire Roberts as superintendent. The school board telling the community that it's been difficult to process all of this and laying out the future it hopes is ahead.
Each day we have learned more, and it has been difficult for all of us who care about the Des Moines Public School District. How we show up for each other defines us as leaders, staff, students, and community members. Sadly, some have used this situation to advance hateful comments. We will not be deterred or distracted by that. We are using this as a moment to come together and build a stronger future. Finally, the successes our district has celebrated in recent weeks are no less today than they were a week ago.
That was School Board Chair Jackie Norris on Friday morning. She said the board never would have hired Roberts if they knew then the information that's now come to light. Meanwhile, Roberts' attorneys this week urged people not to forget the good they say Roberts did in the community.
He's done something good for you, inspired your child, inspired your cousin, inspired your relative, inspired your friend's child. Let me tell you something. You continue to support him.
His attorneys say they're working through the complexities of both the immigration case and the federal case against Roberts. Friday afternoon, Immigration and Customs Enforcement released an in-depth account of Roberts' immigration and criminal history. The first record of Roberts entering the country is in 1994. He flew into New York City on a tourist visa. He left and came back before he was arrested in 1996 for criminal possession of narcotics with intent to sell. He was also charged with unauthorized use of a vehicle in 1998, but the charges were dismissed. In 1999, Roberts flew into San Francisco on a student visa. He applied for a green card 4 times between 2001 and 2018. That final application was denied in 2020. Court documents this week laid out the federal case against Roberts and the lawsuit that Des Moines Public Schools filed against the search firm who helped them hire Roberts. KCCI's Kayla James gives us an in-depth look at both.
KCCI was there last Friday morning when ICE agents were searching through a trailer park in the Ewing Trace neighborhood. But court records released Thursday show ICE agent surveillance of Dr. Ian Roberts began earlier than that. A criminal complaint showing that same morning of September 26th, agents saw Roberts leave his home and followed him when he was in a Jeep Cherokee. It then says the vehicle stopped inside the trailer park, and when agents approached it, it drove away. Agents then found it abandoned near the 1800 block of Swan Lake Circle. It's in that area that KCCI crews saw ICE agents and other members of law enforcement searching.
It was just a little traumatizing.
Neighbors describing to us that day what they witnessed right outside of their homes.
I went out to my deck, and next thing you know, I'm seeing just cars filled up the whole street.
A criminal complaint shows Roberts was found in the brush a couple hundred yards from where the vehicle was abandoned. And they say after that, he was taken into ICE custody.
I got a FaceTime call from him.
In action, Des Moines Public Schools Director of Communications and Public Affairs says he witnessed through a video call.
Dr. Roberts was dressed as he always is, was ready for the workday clearly, but was surrounded by 3 or 4 law enforcement officials, and he appeared to be cuffed at the time. He was standing with his hands behind his back.
Through court documents, investigators say they found this firearm wrapped in a towel under the driver's seat after a supervisory public safety specialist with the school district arrived. According to the criminal complaint, investigators traced the firearm and learned someone believed to be Robert's spouse purchased it in 2019. The criminal complaint also reveals more about the ATF investigation. The night he was detained, the KCCI crew saw the moments ATF officers went in and out of his home. Through court records, investigators say they found multiple firearm magazines and ammunition, and these 3 firearms in various places in the home, one underneath a seat cushion and the other 2 in separate cases. Court records show 2 firearm declaration tags show the firearms belong to an Ian Roberts. One lists an address in Pennsylvania with a 2022 travel date, and the other in Des Moines with a 2024 travel date. Also found in the home, investigators say through court records, were immigration documents under the floor mat of a vehicle found in his garage, such as the order to be removed, copies of Robert's passport from Guyana that expired in 2024, and an expired employment authorization card were also found. The 6-page lawsuit filed on behalf of the school district Friday claims search firm JG Consulting agreed to disclose all known information of a candidate, in this case, Roberts. Now, board members say they don't believe that happened.
Clearly, they missed things of a negative nature because things are being identified now online in hours.
And with that concern, the Des Moines Public Schools Board announced Friday morning it's taking legal action against JG Consulting.
This is about accountability. Taxpayer dollars were used, and we are seeking accountability.
This contract shows the district hired JG Consulting in December of 2022. That contract came after JG Consulting shared a proposal with the district, which showed it is a registered agent with E-Verify, which ensures candidates have been vetted to legally work in the U.S.
JG Consulting was responsible for advertising, recruitment, application, and resume review.
And the district claims through the lawsuit the firm was responsible for presenting qualified candidates to the district. The lawsuit also claims JG Consulting agreed to disclose all known information about candidates and agreed not to refer any candidate unless it believed they could lawfully and satisfactorily perform the position. It claims JG Consulting presented Roberts as a candidate.
The firm failed its duty to properly vet candidates. Ian Roberts should have never been presented as a finalist.
Following Friday morning school board meeting, board members noted JG Consulting told them it would work with a third-party company to complete a comprehensive criminal credit and background check. KCCI reached out to that company, Baker Eubanks, last Saturday and was told it disclosed criminal records found on Roberts' background check, and they were provided to JG Consulting.
We are going to be looking deeply into what JG knew and when they knew it, and whether or not they fairly apprised the board of what they knew and when they knew it, because we certainly believe that there's more than what the board was apprised of at the time.
And asked for if the district will take legal action against Roberts.
Our focus right now is on the search firm and recouping taxpayer dollars and addressing reputational damage that's been done to our district.
And that was our Kayla James reporting there. KCCI has also reached out to JG Consulting, but we've not heard back. Roberts' arrest has sparked a lot of questions about our immigration system. How does the deportation process work? How can employers check citizenship status? And who qualifies for a social security number? So many questions. We sat down with a nationally recognized immigration attorney to help explain.
This is a very high-profile case because this was a very high-profile individual.
Helena Tetzelli, a Miami-based immigration attorney, works on cases across the country. While she's not involved with Ian Roberts' case, she's been following every twist and turn.
This one was particularly interesting because of his position in your community.
The Department of Homeland Security says Roberts has had a final deportation order since May of 2024. Tetzelli says a final order means ICE can act on it.
Absent a motion for stay or a habeas petition in federal court or a motion to reopen if there's new evidence. But absent all that, that's a final order they can effectuate. He's not necessarily entitled to another hearing at this point.
Tetzeli says people can be ordered removed from the country for many reasons, not just criminal convictions.
You don't need to have a criminal record. You can be ordered removed simply because you are no longer here in any kind of valid immigration status. It's my understanding that there may have been a firearms conviction, a possession charge. If you are here illegally, and even in some cases, if you're here legally, but as a non-immigrant, meaning not a green card holder, not a citizen, you can be prosecuted criminally for possession of a firearm. And it's also a separate ground of deportability.
Roberts started as the Des Moines superintendent in 2023. The district says it was never notified about his 2024 deportation order. Tetzeli says that's normal.
It's not public record. So they wouldn't necessarily receive it. There's not even a mechanism, and nor is there a legal requirement that, employers receive this.
School board officials say Roberts presented a social security card and other documents when he was hired. And according to the Iowa Board of Educational Examiners, Roberts stated he was a U.S. citizen under penalty of perjury.
Non-U.S. citizens can get social security cards, but only if they're authorized to work in the U.S. So they either have to be green card holders or have a visa that allows them to work, or an employment authorization document that you can get.
Employers like the Des Moines School District in this case are required to verify that potential employees can work in the U.S. If they're given documents that look legitimate, Tetzeli says that's enough.
And an employer is not required to investigate whether or not the documents that they're provided as proof of authorization to work are legitimate or not. They're required, as long as these appear on their face to be valid and legitimate, the employer is allowed to rely on those. They have a good faith defense, essentially.
Tetzeli also says citizenship status would not show up on a background check.
That would not, in my experience, turn up immigration history. They're doing a search just for a criminal record, arrests, convictions, that kind of thing.
How did Roberts initially enter the country? DHS says he first came on a tourist visa in 1994 and then on a student visa in 1999. Tetzeli says a student visa is a common way people come to the U.S., but that the process has changed a lot since 9/11.
The system for vetting students changed a lot post 9/11 because, of course, the terrorists who, attacked us in 9/11 came here on student visas, some of them. And without knowing more about his particular application, the process he followed to get here, it's hard to say. But typically the visa itself is valid for 5 years. But if you remain in the U.S., you can continue studying here as long as you're complying with the terms of the visa. You're going to class full time.
So what's next for Roberts? Tetzeli says it's not clear.
It's really hard to say without knowing his entire immigration history and, what the basis was for the removal, whether the firearms offense played into it or not. There are mechanisms, there are motions to reopen, even after an appeal has been decided by the BIA. Whether or not they're viable or not really depends on the facts of each case.
Still to come on KCCI 8 News Close Up. In the middle of this storm, Des Moines Public Schools is asking voters for millions to cover its Reimagining Education plan. We sat down with the former principal about the path forward for the board and Des Moines families.
I'd like to go back to the question of trust. I know we said that certainly one individual is mostly responsible for the loss of trust in public faith, but it's just as much as the board's response after the fact. We have a major issue with trust right there, and it's all because of the board, how they responded to it and after the fact. And now they're coming out, oh, we're going to sue this third-party agency that did the research. Well, being in the financial industry, let me tell you, if you hire a third-party vendor, you're still 100% responsible for their actions.
That was just one of the people who showed up to Des Moines' Reimagining Education Town Hall on Saturday morning. The town hall was an opportunity for the school district to answer questions about its 5-year plan to transform DMPS. The district is asking voters to approve a $265 million bond initiative to be spent over the next 5 years. While several people in the audience asked questions about the initiative, the man you just heard from highlighted the broken trust that many people in the community are feeling right now. It's just one piece of the fallout surrounding Robert's arrest. To talk about all of that, I sat down with Alex Hanna. He retired after 27 years leading Des Moines schools, including as principal at Merrill Middle School and vice principal at East High. I asked him about what's at stake right now for the district.
Alex, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
No problem.
How are you processing everything that's happened with Ian Roberts' arrest and detainment?
Oh boy, it's been a lot to take in. It's been shocking, and it's just been really confusing and disappointing and heartbreaking. He was doing just a magnificent job of leading our district. The students absolutely adored him, and he was really doing a great job.
Do you have any advice for parents or for students who are trying to reconcile what they're learning with the man that they knew?
I think we have to right now separate the person from the leadership from the future. As we begin to find some things out about what's going on, I think that is a shocker for all of us. But I think we can't stop right now. There's been so much progress made under his leadership in a very short time. It's too big and it's too important for us to not want to fight for our kids. We're in competition for students, especially when you start talking about the dollars follow the students. So we're in competition. So how do we try to balance the playing field? We balance the playing field by making sure that we can go forward with the bond issue. It's the selling points that we're trying to get to invite parents to stay in public education. And that has to be a collective effort, and we have to continue to work on that.
I just think, though, that this all has happened, about a month before that bond issue, hits the ballot. Do you worry the lasting impact that this incident could potentially have on the district?
I worry about that. However, people make choices based on a number of different issues. This may be one issue. Roberts has resigned, and he's not going to lead the charge here. So we have to look at ways as good stewards of Des Moines Public Schools to see how do we get to where we need to go. So I'm hoping that that energy, I'm hoping that those people that really are lovers of public education, and in particular Des Moines Public Schools, I'm hoping that they are ready to fight and to push forward on appropriate funding through this bond. And the reality is, what do? Go home and quit? No, the reality is we push forward. And when we push forward together, we can make this happen.
On top of the Roberts situation, the Department of Justice is now investigating Des Moines Public Schools' hiring practices. Next, we spoke with a former superintendent about what districts can legally do during the hiring process. Welcome back to Close Up. The U.S. Department of Justice is also investigating the Des Moines School Board's hiring practices. The agency's Civil Rights Division says Des Moines' policies to try and diversify its staff may violate federal anti-discrimination law. Earlier this year, the U.S. Education Department worked to eliminate diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts in all schools. A federal judge struck that down. But there is greater scrutiny of hiring policies that include race as a factor. The State Department of Education tells KCCI all Iowa districts got notice of updates of the federal law in March. They say every school district acknowledged that they were aware and complying. KCCI's Kayla James sat down with the Executive Director of School Administrators of Iowa. That's Dr. Lisa Ramey, and she explains what schools can legally do when they're deciding who to hire. She says this whole situation has also pushed districts to re-examine how they're vetting employees.
When applying as superintendent, what documents and information do applicants have to submit?
Well, the basic, resume, transcripts. You typically fill out background check forms. Obviously, always I-9 paperwork, and then provide those documents that would show that you have the authorization to work in the United States. Typically, once those are received, a district then moves forward with that hire. In our current processes, that documentation and that form filled out is meeting the requirements that employers currently have within the state. There is electronic called E-Verify that is not required in the state. There are some states within the United States that require the use of that. It does then really connect with that work authorization, but then there's also false positives and or negatives that can come with the use of that platform as well. If I was still working in a school district and we looked at our processes, that might be something that we would really have to grapple with of should we add that as a next step to our hiring processes.
What is your reaction to the Justice Department's announcement that they are investigating Des Moines Public Schools?
I was a bit surprised. I think about the challenge here that we have in Iowa, because there's a Iowa code and administrative regs around affirmative action plans. Each district would have their own affirmative action plan, but there are very specific in Iowa code guidelines of what needs to be reviewed and what data should be looked at to determine then your goals in your affirmative action plans.
From your perspective, where's the line between lawful efforts to diversify and unlawful, quote, race-based hiring preferences?
I think it goes back to, continuing to have those goals and thinking about how you can promote different positions in different places to try to get the largest applicant pool possible, but yet making those decisions on the merit of the individual when you're hiring. So I'll give an example. Let's say at an elementary school in a district, you're really hoping to have more male elementary teachers, because predominantly in elementary, it's typically female. Where could we advertise that might result in more males applying for the position? But you have to make sure on that federal level to meet that. The federal law is that your position is open to all to apply, whether they're male or not in this example, and that when you make that final hiring decision, your hiring decision is based on the merit of that individual who has the qualifications and meets what you put out there for professional qualifications.
Close Up will be right back. Stay with us. Thank you for joining us for KCCI 8 News Close Up. We'll see you back here next Sunday. Have a great day.